So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining this introduction to the Mayan light language, or at least that's the way I call it. So my name is Damien, and as you can guess from my accent, I'm born in France, and I do currently live in Guatemala. So it's a small country next to Mexico. And actually the light language I want to introduce you today, it comes from this part of the world, or at least, of course it comes from light and it comes from the stars, but the way it was anchored on our planet happened in Mexico. So I just wanted to welcome all of you and to offer my gratitude for being here. And as it is a fascinating subject, and the first thing I would like to speak about is the different light languages that exist, just to clear, some expectations or confusions. Yeah, because today, if you Google light language, you would end up with a lot of different stuff, on YouTube, all over internet. So you have something that is written in kind of, mystical glyphs, and it's usually really beautiful pictures. So it's kind of a visual light language that as well carries frequencies and codes. You as well have vocal light language. That would be where people channel frequencies and express these frequencies through their voice. You probably are already familiar with, this kind of light languages. You as well have light languages that are more expressed through movement. So that would be a spontaneous, body movement, dancing. And you probably have light language that is channeled through, music, like using musical instruments. Because, as we know, everything is light, and light has its own language. So here we're going to speak about a specific form of light language. And I always start with this because it's important to understand the difference. This language that I'm going to speak about, that, let's say, comes from the stars, but then that was transmitted through Mexican healer lineages. It's based on like geometries that are, let's say, mathematically coherent. Yeah, so it's not, curvy and all with dots, and it's a different kind of language. And so the main difference between this light language that is based on polyhedric geometries, so, I will explain after what it is, but these polyhedric geometries, they are symmetric, they are coherent, they are, let's say, they are the same, geometries for a Mexican than a Japanese, than somebody in UK, than somebody in Africa. Yeah, it's the same geometries because it's a mathematical code that is not subject to culture or to, our own unique, let's say, origin or conditioning. When a lot of other light languages, they are still, channeled through the human body, and the human body is conditioned, right? So for example, the accent you have, the language you speak, if you would speak light language, that would kind of, let's say, give a specific color to the sounds even you're able to produce with your voice. Yeah, if you would take, like in South Africa, a Xhosa, or a Japanese, or, a Thai, or a European, the qualities and even the, the sounds we can produce would be different. This language is universal, so to speak, because it's using geometrical codes that are, existing before humans. Yeah, it's more like a mathematical structure. And these geometries, as they oscillate and as they vibrate, they have different frequencies. They're holding different frequencies. And again, I'm going to go in detail about it. And this is perceived by our, let's say, spiritual self as colors. Yeah, so basically it's a language that blends mathematical geometries that are symmetric, that are coherent, that are, like, say, part of order, and it blends as well colors. And the colors would be, you know, the expression of a specific range of frequency. And by blending these geometries and these colors, then we can have access to a language. Yeah? And a language is a way to articulate an intention or to share in a coherent way something to make sure that you are understood. That's the purpose of any language. Yeah, it's communication. So this light language is a communication with creator, with spirit, source. You call it the way you want, with God, if you wish. And this is a language that is really ancient, and it's a language, and that's the main difference between this light language and other light languages, is that this light language can be transmitted because it's using a universal mathematical code that is the same for every human. Yeah, it's much easier to transmit the skill of, let's say, emanating or using this language to another human than other light languages that are so unique to each, let's say, channel. Yeah, so in other light languages, you would learn how to channel your own resonant code using your own antenna, so to speak. And it would come through voice, through movements, through glyphs and graphics and design. And the only thing you could learn is to somehow access as well for yourself your own channel and to use your own antenna. But then the expression of this light language would be unique to you. Yeah, it would be completely different than my expression or that Abby's expression or anyone else's expression. So this light language would be the same for all the people who would use it, because it's using something that is not based on you as an antenna. It's using an inherent coding, let's say, from our holographic matrix. So just to bring the difference, because I know when people see light language, they come with expectation that maybe it will be tonal, so it will be, sung or using the voice. This one doesn't use the voice, right? It doesn't really require you to draw, although you can draw the geometries. It actually requires you to learn the alphabet of this language. And the alphabet is made of geometries and frequencies. And once you know the alphabet, you're like at school when you were a kid. It means you learn how to kind of create sentences, and with practice, you learn even at the end to make poetry. Yeah, but from, let's say grade 1 at school, learning the alphabet, to poetry, there is a journey of, let's say self-education and practice, like everything. And then it's something that comes more naturally to you. And then you can use this light language to weave your own poetry, which is the own weaving of light of your intentions to creator. And then you want as well to tell creator how your intention can become manifested. So it's a prayer. It's a prayer that doesn't use emotions necessarily. It doesn't use, let's say, praise and grief like, the traditional indigenous cultures. It doesn't necessarily use, human words in our own language. Doesn't use ritual. Doesn't use, all the shamanic artifacts or the religious artifacts to bridge our consciousness with spirit or with source. It's using a language that bypasses all what is formed in our, let's say, 3D world. It's using a language that is using basically codes, geometries, which are like patterns and frequencies. And by using these patterns and frequencies, you can invite, and it's always an invitation, you can invite the light to shape itself and to express itself in a specific way. Yeah, so you don't necessarily have the control about the outcome, because who does? Yeah, if we would have any control about the outcome, then it would enter more the realm of magic. And in magic, that would not be considered as a high magic, where you leave the outcome of your magical action to source, but that will be more like a controlled magic. So what we would call in the ancient days a lower, magic. And lower is not bad compared to higher. It just means it's controlled. So here it's more the, let's say, the realm of high magic, in the sense that you invite, but you cannot truly control, how it will happen or the outcome, or even if it's really meant to happen, right? Because who are we to know, what is a greater plan? So this light language is somehow a language with creator, but it also uses creator's intelligence, which means that, you cannot bypass, let's say, the greater plan, call it the way you want. You can heal, you can transform, but you cannot necessarily misuse it. Misuse it would be to use it with a personal will, your ego will, against the will of source, of God, against the divine will. So just to bring you some context, before I go into the detail. And by the way, if you have any question, you can put it in the chat. Like this, I see if I can weave it in the flow, or you can as well, raise your little hand that you will find at the bottom, bottom range of your Zoom screen, like just waving your hand. And then, I will be happy to hear your questions. So the story goes like this for this language. One lady called Estrella Fuentes, who was half Polish, half Spanish. She's still half Polish, half Spanish, sorry. Born in Chicago, in the United States, in the late 60s. She was 20 years old, and she decided to go traveling. She went, hitchhiking, the whole summer of love, the hippie times, and she went through all Central America. She spent a lot of time in Colombia, and she was a gifted psychic, and she had already a lot of, let's say, healing abilities, and she wanted to learn more. So she went to different indigenous people to learn more their own skills. After spending a few years in Colombia, she ended up in Mexico. In Mexico, she ended up in the state of Veracruz. I share for the one who maybe have been to Mexico. So it's a state in the southeast of Mexico. She ended up in a small village called Oración, which literally means prayer in Spanish. And in this village, she understood that, there were not that many people living, maybe 100, 150, but they were all what we call curanderas and curanderos, which literally in Spanish means healers, the one that cares. And so she was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And she started to stay there as she was invited. And she started to witness like a lot of miracles, stuff that, didn't happen, let's say, in the conventional, medical world in the West. She could see things like, let's say, complete remissions of disease. She could see things like psychic surgery. She could see people who would come, with heavy, dreadful conditions, and after 1 hour, walking out healed, or let's say, as after a spontaneous remission. So she said, wow, that's cool. And she was invited to stay, and she eventually stayed 3 years, 3 complete years as the first time in this village. And she got a mentor. Her mentor was called Esperanza, which means hope in Spanish. And she learned there. How did she learn? She learned how to heal, but there they were not teaching the way I speak, right? They would not explain you the mechanics and the dynamics of stuff. It was more like, let's say, a shamanic way of transmitting knowledge. The shamanic way is you shut up, you spend time next to the people, and in silence, you subconsciously receive, and connect with the energies they're using, the downloads, the grids they're using. And over time, they become part of your field as well. So it's the old school way to transmit knowledge. It takes time. It's not a weekend workshop, right? It's to spend years with people that don't explain anything, but then she could see what was happening. And she started to see all these geometries and these colors always being emanated, or like if they were floating in the air or coming out of the hands of the people, coming out of their body and going all around. And because her main psychic sense is visual, she could see it all the time. And she was like, wow, what's that? Eventually, yeah, she learned a lot of things there. After 3 years, she was asked to leave and to go back to the West and to find a way that she could transmit this knowledge to the Western people. Why? Because in Mexico at that time, so that would be, early 70s, the younger generation, they were not interested in this kind of stuff. Yeah. They were more interested with, going to the States, making a lot of cash, partying, and somehow it was already a rupture in the transmission through the generations. It took this woman, so now her name is Star Fuentes, Star with a double R. It took her more than 20 years to understand how to teach this to, us, let's say, mundane Western humans. Fast, without spending 6 months together or 1 year together, because then, who can afford these days to do that? And the way she did it is that, she wrote manuals and she started to teach. And then, more and more people started to learn and more people started to teach. So that's just to give you the background story, because it's always important to have a background story. In this village, she was told that about 26 generations ago, and they know the name of all, let's say, the lineage holders, if you want. So we have a list of these names, and some of them lived really long, really long as being, more than 100 years. It's not, I'm not speaking about 1,000 years here. So 26 generations ago, they claim that there is one being that literally appeared or materialized in their village. His body was made of light. Yeah. The name that the villagers gave him was Joshet Lalmenda, which is, a Nahuatl name. So it's a dialect from Mexico. And he was the first. And he brought all this knowledge of dimensional work and light language works and a lot of, let's say, powerful healing techniques. So they remember, what we call the Sampradaya in India, which is a succession of lineage holders that was never lost. And today, this woman that lives in the States, she is the current lineage holder of this, tribe that somehow after, for some, mysterious reason, kind of either scattered but this village cannot be found anymore. There was some story with the Mexican government, the dark ages in the 70s or 80s. So that's just to give you some background story. So it's a language, it's a technology that comes, let's say, from the stars, as we can say that there's a star being that appeared in this village, and that after was kept and transmitted through the dark age, where we lost all our magic, Middle Age and so on. It was kept in this village and now it's spreading again. It started to be taught in the West, I believe, in 1993 or 1994 as the first class, or around that time. So now, how does it work? Just to go into more specific. So as you all know, because you're all here and you're all educated, everything is made of light. So we can define light as being consciousness and as well as being energy. Yeah. So light is energy, which is information carried by a wave form. So that will be the physical definition of energy. It's a code, so an information, data, carried by a wave. Yeah, so a light wave carries, the codes from the sun, for example, if it's coming from the sun. A laser is a wave of light that carries other kind of frequencies and information. Sound waves carry informations that are decoded and you hear sounds and you hear words. So light is energy and it is consciousness. So now we all know, or we all, I believe, intuitively know that at some level, yeah, we all come from the same light or the same source. So we are all coming from the same, infinite, let's say, realm or eternal life origin. Everything, not only humans, but minerals, vegetables, animals, spirits, any invisible presences, and humans as well, and the earth, because everything is made of energy. So now, when we want to understand how it works, is that from, let's say, the singularity, or let's say the first, let's call it the first field of creation. Yeah, then let's say it was a whole infinite amount of energy contained in a single point. So it was unmanifested. It was as a potential. Yeah, that's what all the mystery schools and the ancient traditions remember. Then there was a moment where there was an intent and a will to experience itself. Yeah, just keep it like this. Even if your belief system doesn't match, is that, simply keep, your mind open as a story. Take it as a fairy tale if you wish. And when this intent to experience itself came, then there was a split in the singularity that started to express itself. The way it expressed itself first was sound. Yeah, because when something goes really, it has no speed at all, and it starts to move, first we would perceive it as sound, and then it will accelerate, and only then it will be light. That's important. Yeah, it doesn't start with light. It always starts with sound. So at the beginning was the verb. At the beginning was om. Whatever traditions, they all remember that. When the light started to move, yeah, it started to take different grids. Yeah. So I'm not giving you here a course, in multidimensional mechanics, but basically the way it works is that it splits. The one splits in two. Yeah. So which would be an electric and a magnetic component, or masculine and feminine. And then the two, masculine and feminine, merge again and go back to the one. And then it splits in two, and so it's more a movement like this. It was a Trinity-based, let's say, template, which is not the duality as we experience it today. It was a split in two, but that would merge again and go back into oneness at every breath, if you want. And once this light started to densify or to slow down, if you want, it started to use different grids. These grids, you can see it as a shaping of patterns. It means that in the oscillation and the vibration, which is the movement of the particles, yeah, there would be a specific rhythm or a specific pattern expressed with a specific intention. And as this pattern would be repeated, as it densifies more and more, I'm trying to go fast and we could go in detail about it. There is a moment where it crystallizes enough so that it takes shape. Yeah, and in this light language, we perceive geometries that are polyhedric. So polyhedras are geometries with, where you have a center point and you have a symmetry all around. You have, triangles and squares and pentagons. So for example, the cube is one of the most simple, polyhedra. But the dodecahedron that you probably are familiar with because it's one of the Platonic solid, the tetrahedron, the octahedron, the icosahedron, that are all like basic shapes that even, the Greek philosopher Plato identified as building blocks of the universe. But these geometries, this is how today we use and perceive them. But when you understand what it is, this is not a single geometry. It's a grid. And what does it mean, a grid? You could take this geometry and, flatten it, repeat it ad infinitum, and you would have specific lines, angles, proportions, faces that would be like a carpet, you could say, of, design that would be coherent. It will be repeated ad infinitum. And then the light of source, when it goes through this grid, it carries specific attributes. Let's say it carries specific intentions, specific qualities. and then it crystallizes denser and denser. Yeah. And eventually it goes to what we call the Merkabit field. Yeah, the Merkabit field is how the electric grids and the magnetic grids merge together. Yeah, it's how they collapse into each other to give birth to what you would call your holographic body or your holographic screen, which that you call a reality. Yeah, so I'm not giving you a course, a full detailed course in there. It's just to understand where light language works. This light language works before the electric and the magnetic aspect of your consciousness merge together and create the reality as you know it, your body, your thoughts, your emotions, everything. It works before. Yeah, it still works at a grid level, which would be a higher level of manifestation than your Merkabit or electromagnetic, let's say spinning vortexes. Yeah, so we're speaking there about one language that goes much faster than light, so to speak. Yeah, so this ancient indigenous Mexican, for example, they say this language, it goes 5 times faster than light. And you could wonder why they say 5 and not 6 or 7, but in their understanding, in their own, cosmology, they understood that, it goes faster than the light from the sun. That still takes 8 minutes, to come from the sun to your eyes. It's something that works, let's say, at a higher level. And when we say higher, it doesn't mean better. It means it's closer from source. Or let's say it's before. It's at a more subtle level than electric energy and magnetic energy. So now, everything that we experience in our holographic reality is made of light. Everything, your thoughts, your emotions, your physical body, the food you eat, your spiritual experiences, any object that you see is made of energy and therefore is made of light. And the way that we experience it as, an holographic template, which means we are like a projector and it goes through our lenses, yeah, like a lens that would diffract the light. Then we experience things, shape and oh yeah, look, I have a water bottle, but this is, we all learned that this is actually empty. It's just made of a lot of space within, atoms, but even these atoms, they're made of, quantum particles that are holding a lot of energy, but it's mostly emptiness. But our eyes, our, perception starts to define things as, being tangible and solid. But we all remember sometimes, not always, that it's all made of light. To create any object, to create any thought, to create any emotion, to create any intention, we use light. Yeah. And light is being shaped in a specific way to give birth to something. When it is being shaped, it goes through a grid of patterns, rhythms, angles, repetition, vibrating at different frequencies. Yeah, so let's say what we perceive as red would be a lower frequency than what is perceived as blue or purple. And according to the frequency it vibrates, it gives birth to something. So when we use this light language, we are learning to use the language that creates things, literally, that gives shape to them. And then this shape is experienced as what we call reality. So when we learn this language, why to learn such a language? Because you could say, yeah, but it's already created. The thing is that you're still an holographic projector. It means your perception of the world goes through your own filters. It goes through your own grids. It goes through your own magnetic, electric, fields. And before that, it goes through whatever is called conditioning. Yeah, so the way we experience and perceive reality is conditioned by, your karma, other incarnations, your ancestors, your genetic, all your experience of this lifetime, school, all the books you read, all the experiences you had, the people you met who spoke to you, and so on. But there's a big part of the conditioning that is as well not belonging to this lifetime. It's as well cultural and so on. So our conditioning is a set of grids that shape the light that we experience and perceive. So that's why when I decode, light around me, I see it through my own filters and through my own conditioning. If I want to change my conditioning, I need to rewrite or overwrite the grids that the light goes through in my body, or at least it's one way to see it. Yeah, if I do psychology work or I do, other kind of work, I might, tame the light so I can, learn how to act best from it. I can choose the best strategy. I can find kind of peace within myself, but, you cannot erase easily the conditioning. And it's not a need to erase it because you need to rewrite it. So to rewrite a computer program, which is, your own holographic self, you better know how to code, right? Otherwise, probably it will be a mess. What people do, in many healing technologies that myself I learned and practiced, is that, we give our intention of changing the grids or transforming the grids to another intelligence to do it. So we pray, and we call angels, masters, we call whoever, and we ask them to do this work. So it's like if you delegate the coding, to another intelligence, trusting and hoping not to be fooled that, they can do it. So this is the whole, let's say, more new age way to deal with healing. Yeah, in the shamanic tradition, they would access this code more through the transcendental realms, which would be the spirit realms. So they would journey through the underworld and the upper world. So in their, let's say, the astral plane, and they would perceive this coding, this conditioning through, animals, plants, dragons, mythical creatures, other beings, and they would recode at this level. But this is the astral plane. So that will be, the fourth dimension. Light language works faster. So in the sense it works before the astral plane is even formed. Yeah. So you could say, if you're familiar with mysterious code, it works at the Buddhic level, which would be the fifth density, so to speak. Actually, fifth dimension, sorry. And maybe even sometimes it works at a higher level even. So what we learn when we study this language is you learn the alphabet of this language. And the alphabet of this language, it's a set of geometries. So, you start with simple one. You start with cubes, you start with spheres, with cylinders, you start with cones, and then you add more letters. It's like at school, you don't start, you start with the vowels and you're like, oh, okay. And then, we don't blast you with the 26 letters straight away. So in light language, you have about, let's say, 140 different geometries, probably more, that you can work with. So that will be the letters, so to speak. And then you have the light, so the colors, because the geometries are always vibrating and oscillating. And I invite you to understand that there's a distinction here. Yeah, the higher the vibration of something, the lower is the oscillation. The lower the vibration, the higher is the oscillation. That's what they explain in, let's say, theoretical physics today. So because the oscillation is magnetic and the vibration would be electric, so to speak. And every particle has a magnetic and electric counterpart. So when the oscillation and vibration rate changes, the color change as well. Yeah, so for example, we all know that, you have your chakras and that your chakra are like a kind of rainbow. Yeah, so what it means? It means that it's white light from God, from source, from the divine, that is diffracted into a rainbow. So your root chakra is red, your sacral is orange, then the solar plexus is more yellow, the heart is green and blue and purple, indigo, and so on. So we have a rainbow spectrum. So we are diffracted beings from the light of oneness and unity. So we perceive through our chakras and interface with the world through our chakras. So when I interact with something physical, I interact more with my root chakra. When I interact with co-creation, I interact more with my second chakra. When I interact more with my will, it's more my solar plexus. When I interact more with love, it's more my heart, and so on. So when you want this language to address a specific aspect of your consciousness or a specific plane of consciousness, then you would choose the color that resonates the most with it. So it means that one letter of the alphabet, like a geometry, can be in different colors. And according to the color that you combine it with, it will act at a different level of your consciousness. Yeah, red will be more physical, orange will be more in your sacral and everything that relates there. If you put it in blue, it will go more into your communication. If you put it more in purple, it's more mental, psychic. If you put it in green, it's more into the heart, into the healing. It goes to different parts. So that's what the frequencies are. Let's say the frequency spectrums are matching colors. To make it, simple, the spirit, our own holographic projector, perceives, frequencies as colors. So now in the rainbow, you have a whole range of color, right? You don't have just one red, one orange, one yellow. It's kind of fading inside it into each other. It's unfolding here. So you have many shades of red, many shades of orange, many shades of yellow, and so on. So in light language, eventually when you learn, let's say, all the different levels and the whole alphabet, you end up with 155 shades of colors. Yeah, so that's a lot of colors. And what does it mean? It just means that you can be more specific. Instead to work with a plain green that contains all the subtleties of green, you can go to a specific shade of green that has a more narrow, specific, let's say, focused impact on our consciousness. So it doesn't mean it's less powerful to use, one color as a generic color or as a primary color. It means that when you go into the specific shades, you're more, it's like surgery. You can work in a more detailed and specific way. So in this class, we learned the alphabet, which is the geometries that are the letters, and we combine them with different frequency colors that have different impact on our consciousness. And then we learn how to combine them and we learn how to feel it. Yeah. So in the class, you literally receive from the teacher's energetic field to your own energetic field all the geometries and all the frequencies, that maybe are already there, obviously, because it's a language you already use, but you use it probably unconsciously. So the purpose of this transmission is to bridge your unconscious and subconscious mind with your conscious mind so that you can consciously, intentionally weave this alphabet, so these geometries and these colors, to tell the light what you want or how you would like it to be. And then it becomes conscious versus unconscious. To become conscious, you need to consciously learn, the meaning of each letter of the alphabet, and then the frequencies, how they operate, and then you need to learn it consciously if you want to use it consciously. As all the classes from this lineage, when, let's say, if you would come to a class, the class, would be like 10% of the transmission. That would be all the mental, the mind candies, I call them. It's just to satisfy your mind, know how to do. And 90% still remains subconscious because the download, the amount of information is so big that, it would probably overwhelm any human if it will be a conscious teaching, and you would need, years in university for one geometry. So the main transmission is subconscious, and it happens through night school, which is, let's say, if one day you would choose to learn that, you would sign up, and then you would start in your dreams, usually between 1 and 3 in the morning. You would start to connect to this lineage, and you would start to reveal, and let's say unpack the box of the download. So like this, it's much easier because when you come to class, you already got the whole download, and we're just giving the conscious part to satisfy, let's say, the hunger of your mind to understand how it works and how we can use it. But understand that when this lady, she went to Mexico, she didn't have the 10% conscious explanation. It was pure subconscious, and that's why it took her a long time to figure it out, right? And to be able to transmit it, because they would not speak. It's like like Star Wars, Yoda and Luke. Yoda, he doesn't explain Jedi multidimensional dynamics. He say practice and practice again until you can do it. And so that's the whole way of mentors and apprentices. So when you go through night school, you're already receiving the transmission, and then it becomes easier for you to use this language. This language, how can you use it once you learn it? You can either emanate it. So an emanation is that you would intend that from your field, a specific, let's say, geometry vibrating at a specific frequency, so a color, would come around you, go somewhere specific, maybe in a live situation, maybe in the room where you are, maybe around someone, inviting the light to have a specific behavior and to hold specific qualities so that it can change, change the quality, the current quality of the light. Yeah, so I go in a space, I can emanate a specific geometry with a specific color, for example, to clear the space. Clear the space as you would smudge or energetically, cleanse a space from, any residual energies, entities, heavy or inappropriate thought forms, and so on. You could, study something, like listen to me now, or read a book, and it's a bit complex. You can emanate a geometry and a specific color. For example, that will be a yellow sphere to help you have more clarity about, what you're studying. Or you could, if you see that you're distracted and you need to focus more, you can emanate the geometry that helps you to be more focused. Or you are tired and you can emanate the geometry connected with the frequency that gives you more energy, more vital energy. Or you're in an airplane and there's too many baby crying, and you can emanate the geometries to invite them to relax. Yeah. And maybe they won't, right? Because maybe baby needs to cry, but you can always invite, and many times it works. So these geometries can be emanated. So an emanation is something that won't last really long. It's an impact you have on your holographic environment that will last, let's say, probably 15, 20 minutes, and then it will kind of dissipate because you're probably not focused and mono, let's say, like one-pointed, concentrated, so you're thinking about other things. So it would not last. And the way to weave light in a way that lasts is to create your own grids. So a grid is a sequence, a combination of many geometries and many colors. It's like a prayer, it's like a song, it's like a story. Yeah, so it's a way to weave the light. So first you can weave these geometries and these colors in your chakra system. So and we do that when we teach the first day. So what does it mean? It means that your chakras, so let's speak just about the 7 main chakras. They are interfaces with, inner, outer reality. So now your chakras are conditioned by whatever happened in the past, by whatever code you carry, by your karma and your genetic and your life experiences. You could choose to put a filter in each of your chakras, which is one geometry and one color, to invite this chakra to behave with the main influence of this geometry and this color for, let's say, a couple of months, so that you can learn something more in a more coherent way, because the, let's say, the influence of your experience with this chakra will be the same for weeks. Yeah, so let's say that somebody has a safety issues in their own body, and you would put a geometry that help them to have clearer boundaries and to feel safer. So they put this in their root chakra, and they put other geometries. So when they go through life, when they interact with their root chakra, it will first go through this geometry and this color that will invite, teachings, experiences about safety, about expressing, having clearer boundaries. And after a couple of weeks, they will have learned so much about putting boundaries, then probably it's more efficient than if they would just go through their own conditioning, because I remind you that it's anyway their conditioning that brought us in this place in the first place, that brought them in this situation of not feeling safe. So you can grid your chakras, which would give you an intentional experience of how you interact with the world and what you want to heal, what you want to transform, what you want to learn about. And then, after a couple of weeks or months, you would change the geometries in your chakra if you consider that you learned enough and you want a new experience. But you can as well weave entire prayers that would be more specific. Yeah, for example, let's say I would like to work on anything that can be physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. So let's say I want to work on my ancestors. It's a work I'm doing these days. And I want, let's say, to bless my unblessed ancestors. So the unblessed ancestors will be, all the one who had a shitty life, the orphans, the ungrieved, the possessed, the deviants, and the poisonous mothers, and all these kind of weird ancestors that we have. And I would weave a prayer that would have a title, and that would sound like, all my unblessed ancestors from both my father and mother lineages are fully blessed and healed now. Something like this. So it's my prayer, right? So I could hold this prayer, and I could, light a candle, and I could just repeat this prayer the whole time. And that would be, my own way with my emotions, my heart, my thoughts, to pray to Creator to heal my ancestors. Or I can create a light language grid, which is a mathematical pattern, rhythmic, coherent way to recode the light that defines my relationship with my ancestors, and the light that shapes my whole and entire ancestral lineage. So that one from all would be 49 geometries and colors woven as a storyline that would say, hey, Creator, please, I would like you to connect to my ancestors, to both my lineages, and to be able to identify who is unblessed and to bring them blessing and healing. I want the healing to happen easily, gently, and every geometry, every color would be like one word, one adverb, one qualitative, one adjective, one aspect of how I want this to unfold. And once I weave this together, I kind of activate it, and then it becomes like a loop. Yeah, so it's like if you run a song, on your phone, on your Spotify in loop. So it's a prayer that is constantly looping into your field, going to Creator, source, and going back to you, and it will keep on going until you maybe say to stop, ask it to stop, or until it's complete. Your intention until it's complete. So this allows you to do, it's like permaculture. You do a lot of work at the beginning because you have to create the storyline, you have to create the prayer. But once you say, oh, I activate you, you don't have to think about it anymore. It's in the background. So it's as if you would pray every day, 24 hours a day with your candle and your incense and prayers, but, free hands praying. You can do whatever else you want because it runs in the background. And it works. It works because it will bring you to the situations, the clarity, will bring you the opportunities, the epiphanies, the healing that you need to make whatever intention, manifested. It might not manifest in the way that you expect or that you control, but it will manifest according to, let's say, the highest good, so to speak. So this is another way to work with light language. Yeah. So it's either you emanate, which is like not long lasting. It's something you just say, oh, calm down, and then you emanate a blue cube and yellow cylinder, and you just think about it. You don't have to visualize anything, and you're weaving the light. So it means you're inviting the light to work in a specific way, and that doesn't really last. It lasts, the time that a couple of minutes just to change the situation. You can put geometries and colors in your chakras and go for a longer process of transformation and learning. It's not for your whole life. It's something it's like, in the ancient days, we had this breastplate with gemstones. Maybe you heard about that in the mystery schools. So, every stone would have a specific frequency and would be connected to a specific virtue, and you would learn about these virtues. So it's like a breastplate is just a chakra plate that, allows you to attract specific kind of experiences so that you can learn whatever you want to learn in the most efficient and coherent way, at least from my masculine perspective. And the other way is to weave these geometries and these colors together as a song or as a prayer that, would somehow sustain one specific intention. It can be anything, increasing your sales if you have a business, receiving more money, selling your car, selling your house, meeting your ideal soulmate, clearing this pattern, this addiction, supporting your communication, boosting your psychic abilities, something super far-stretched and galactic from something super mundane. Yeah, there's no limits in about what you can actually do. The only limit is your own imagination, and it's your own ability to weave a story that is, realistic enough so that it can be manifested. So that's basically the practical use of it at the beginning, right? Because at the beginning you have to learn. It's like grade 1, you don't start with poetry. You start by, reading and writing. Eventually, once you integrate these teachings more, then it starts to become more spontaneous and you don't have to put any intention in it. It means that if today, from where I live, we don't have buses, but we have boats because I live next to a lake. So it's a public boat. So it's like a bus. Yeah. So when I sit to somebody that I don't know, yeah, and if I choose to be, let's say, consciously and intentionally in service, what happens from my experience is that at some level of consciousness, so you could call it the higher self of this person, connects with my higher self and say, hey, oh, you have a nice library. Oh, wow, this is good, download this. We have this diabetic problem. I see you have the grades. Can we take it? And, I'm like, I'm in service, it's free library. So they take the code, yeah, and then we didn't speak. We don't need concept. It's just happening at another level because, and I believe this is happening, for anyone, of course, all the time, but it requires you to be in service. But the more, let's say, the more coherent are your own grids, the more coherent is your ability to weave the light, then it's easier to transmit to someone else. Because a cube is a cube, you know, for me, it's a cube, for you, it's a cube, for a local Mayan indigenous, a cube is a cube. And in Japan, it's also a cube. And on the moon, it's also a cube. You know, it looks the same. It's still 6 faces and 8 vertices. So if it would be another kind of light language that would be all, you know, my own, then I would really need to sing it to them to have an impact on them. You understand? That's the limitation of most of the channeled light languages. Because my unique code cannot necessarily be in resonance and matching the perception of another human. Yeah, maybe yes, maybe no. When geometry, it's kind of working for everything, you know, plants, animals, humans. A cube is a cube and a sphere is a sphere. And the spirit understands that it's beyond, you know, any, let's say, identification, cultural or ego identification with, you know, a conditioned self. So this allows you that whatever you do later, once you integrate these teachings, is that you start to emanate a lot of geometries and colors without thinking about it. Yeah, so the extremely psychic people, they see sometimes, you know, people put their hands with a healing intention and they see, like, you know, a train of little geometries and colors flowing. Because when your subconscious mind and your conscious mind are more familiar with this language, then, you know, you don't need anymore to think about it. You just can go straight. Which means you just intend something, and this light language weaves the light without you having to do any effort about it. So that's, you know, where I want to start. I want to ask you what questions you have. So I'm gonna share my screen. Just give me a minute. I want to show you some ideas. So when you learn this light language, it can come with a software. You have a free software, you have a paying software, and it makes it easier, right? It makes it easier for you to work with all these geometries because, you know, so that would be somehow how the software looks like. And just to show you an example, probably so when we were speaking about you know, the chakras, that will be a grid that looks like this. And for example, so for example, this geometry that is really familiar to people, it's an octahedron. And this geometry is one of the 5 Platonic solid. And it's a geometry here that is in green. Yeah, so this in light language would mean, it would mean that the healing, because green is kind of healing and new growth, the healing is distributed between the spiritual, mental, emotional, physical plane, that the healing is as well filtered through osmosis, through all the cells. And it would mean as well that there is a balancing of the mind and the physical body into the heart, so that the healing ends up in the heart. And it could mean a lot of other things. And so all of these things, for example, would be summarized or contained in this geometry and this color. Now, let me show you another example. A yellow cylinder. So it looks like a cylinder. So for example, this would be to, if you would have a question or a doubt, or you would seek answers, you would emanate this yellow cylinder to help you to connect first to clarity and to your kind of intuition, and as well to be able to receive a confirmation Yeah, so a confirmation that whatever you perceive is accurate. So that would be like a pendulum, you know, yes or no. So for example, I would look, oh, should I do this? Should I go to this place today? You would emanate a yellow cylinder and listen, and suddenly it will be inside, yes, no. So it would facilitate, let's say, your own communication with your own guidance or gut feeling. If, for example, we would put a sphere, so this is a sphere, this is in purple, so that would open all possibilities for you to connect to wisdom and to spirituality, to knowledge. And it would open it so much that this would include all kind of knowledge, not necessarily the one you need in the moment, but all of it. And if you would keep the same color and use another geometry, which is still about wisdom and knowledge and spirituality, and sometimes psychic powers, this is a dodecahedron, so it's a 12 pentagon geometry. And this, for example, would open only 12 possibilities corresponding to the 12 archetypes that you are, corresponding to the 12 zodiacal signs, to your 12 strands of DNA, to the 12 houses, you know, in your natal chart, to gain knowledge. Yeah, so it will still work with purple, which is knowledge, wisdom, but it will work in a different way. Yeah, you could work, for example, as, you know, stretching, expanding your own psychic ability, your own wisdom and knowledge. So you see, if you keep the same color and you change the geometry, it works at the same level of your consciousness. So here it will work more in your third eye and the whole mental realm, but the geometry will invite the light to have a different behavior. And if I change the color, then it would work more through, you know, working at the different planes of consciousness. So for example, this would mean to increase and bring more vitality and vital energy if I'm tired, for example. So it would just boost my vital energy. If I'm feeling already really vital, I could use a pyramid to stabilize, integrate, and cultivate this vitality. So at the beginning, you learn kind of these geometries. You know, some of them are more geometric, some, you know, they're less obvious. And we learn at the beginning all these colors. So when you learn light language and you start, let's say, which is a 3 days class to start with, it's the first 2 levels. You learn, you know, 18 colors and 14 geometries. So that's what you learn. Because you need to start with the basics, you know. And then if you would like to go, you know, deeper, you have many more geometries that are all much more complex, as you can see on the screen. Yeah, it's much more complex because it's more specific. So it doesn't mean it's necessarily more powerful. It just works on a really specific way. Yeah, I just show you, you know, to see the. And when you work with, then instead to start with a rainbow, you start with all this shade of greens, like you can see on the left of the screen. You have all these different shades of greens that all have a different kind of effect. So this is just to show you, you know, how it works. It's a language. So the software exists because, you know, it will be difficult to draw it. And at the beginning, it can really help, you know, to use. Obviously, the shaman indigenous in Mexico didn't have computers. They didn't need that, right? But, you know, today we also want to satisfy our visual sense, and it's all, you know, we like, it's easier. Otherwise, we probably will not build really complex grids because we had to do it, we would have to do it all in our mind and hold all the geometries together. That is a skill that today we probably We don't have it, you know. So that's a kind of introduction, and I see the time passed. If you have any question, let me know. So for your information, I will teach next time this class at the end of May, so in a month. It's kind of 28th, 29th, and 30th of May. It's kind of 5 hours a day. In UK, it will be around this time, so you're 3 o'clock until 8 o'clock. We can do this at this time, and so you learn how. So you receive all the downloads, so all these geometries, all these colors. You learn how to emanate them. You learn how to put them in your chakras, and you learn how to make, you know, prior intention grids. And we have practice, a lot of practice. The download, of course, is, you know, is a big part of the class as well. And this already allows you to address any aspect of your life. Material, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, you know, because you don't need always to be super specific. So it means you don't need to know all, you know, the complex words in the dictionary to write beautiful and efficient poetry, right? You can write poetry with simple words, and it's still, what matters is, you know, the love, the will you put inside. So even if, you know, you start with these 2 levels, you can already address everything in a really coherent way that can work. And then after, if you want to, you know, you really like it, and then, you know, you can always learn more, you know, more geometries, more colors, as you would, you know, study and learn more words in the dictionary and refine the way that you express yourself. Do you have any question?
I just want to say thank you, Damien, for being here and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with us. Having done your course, I can definitely recommend it. I definitely had a massive download before the session, before the course started, I remember, and it's powerful stuff. It's really powerful work, like, and also what you learn is invaluable as well. So I definitely recommend it if you can make it to one of his classes. It's brilliant, and you get so much some great like manuals and booklets and everything, so you can really work and study it in your own time as well. So
Thank you, Abby.
Yeah, thank you so much, Damien, for being here and sharing that. That's great.
Anyway, Abby will provide you probably my email. So if you would have another question, you know, something that after integrating or reflecting comes to your awareness, just, you know, feel free to contact me.
Yeah, I will send an email to everyone to follow up with a replay of this so you can watch it, because I know some of you are in like 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning right now. So I know some of you may not still be awake, but like I will send that out, and I'll put his details on there so you can connect with him to see, you know, and I'll also put the dates of his next class as well, so you're able to connect with that.
Thank you so much, Abby, and thank you everyone for being here. And yeah, hope to see you around somewhere in the virtual space or in the physical space.
Thank you, everyone. Speak to you all soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.